It was supposed to be a quiet day at one of New York City's most prestigious hospitals. The hallways were bustling with doctors, nurses, and visitors, but no one expected what would happen next. As BTS's Jungkook, still in recovery from his recent emergency surgery, attempted to take a few steps outside his hospital room, a horrifying moment unfolded before everyone's eyes. Without warning, his body swayed, his breathing became erratic, and before anyone could react, he collapsed. Gasps echoed through the hallway. The medical staff rushed toward him, their voices laced with urgency and panic. What had just happened? Was Jungkook's condition worse than what had been reported? Had he suffered another major setback? The fans, already worried about his health after his near-fatal food poisoning incident in the military, now feared the worst. Was this a sign that his body was failing to recover? The terrifying collapse that stunned everyone moments before his unexpected collapse, Jungkook had been attempting his first short walk since undergoing surgery. His condition had initially been so critical that movement was restricted, but after days of intensive care, doctors had finally allowed him to take a few steps. Accompanied by a nurse and one of his closest medical specialists, he slowly made his way into the hallway, gripping the four stand beside him for support. AT first, everything seemed normal. Though weak, he nodded reassuringly at the medical staff, determined to regain his strength. His steps were slow, his posture slightly hunched, but he was walking, a small victory in his grueling battle toward recovery. But then, something changed. His face turned noticeably pale, his hands trembled, and his knees buckled slightly. The nurse, sensing something was wrong, quickly reached out to him, asking if he needed to sit down. Jungkook, always the fighter, shook his head. He wanted to push through. Without another second's warning, his eyes fluttered shut, his body went completely limp, and he collapsed onto the cold hospital floor. Doctors rushed in. A matter of life and death, the hospital erupted into chaos. Alarms were triggered. Doctors and emergency responders sprinted down the hall, shouting instructions as they lifted Jungkook off the floor. A stretcher was immediately brought in, and within seconds, he was rushed back into the intensive care unit. Jin, who had been staying with him since his transfer to New York, arrived at the scene just in time to see Jungkook being wheeled away. The sight of his younger brother, unconscious and fragile, shattered him. Witnesses saw him gripping his hands into fists, his jaw clenched as he held back tears. "Tell me he's okay," Jin demanded, his voice cracking as he cornered one of the senior doctors. "Tell me this isn't as bad as it looks." But the doctor's expression remained unreadable. "We need to stabilize him first."
"No answers. No reassurances."
Only uncertainty. The shocking truth behind his collapse as medical teams worked tirelessly behind closed doors. The truth behind Jungkook's sudden collapse began to emerge. His body, still weak from the extensive surgery on his abdomen, was struggling to recover at the expected pace. The food poisoning incident that had initially led to his hospitalization had done far more damage than anyone had predicted. Sources revealed that Jungkook had suffered internal complications due to prolonged exposure to contaminated food while serving in the military. The severity of the poisoning had affected not only his digestive system but also his overall immunity, leaving his body vulnerable. His surgery had been successful in repairing the internal damage, but his body was still battling the aftermath. He was already pushing himself too hard, a hospital insider admitted. Jungkook has always been someone who refuses to show weakness, but the truth is, he wasn't ready to move around yet.
His body needed more time.
The collapse was his body's way of forcing him to stop. But was this just a temporary setback? Or had Jungkook's condition reached a dangerous turning point? The silent tears of Jin, a brother's unbreakable love as doctors fought to bring Jungkook back to stability, Jin remained outside the ICU, pacing anxiously. He refused to leave, even when hospital staff urged him to rest. He couldn't rest, not when Jungkook was fighting for his life just beyond those walls. Witnesses say that at one point, Jin pressed his forehead against the ICU window, watching his younger brother from afar, his shoulders trembling. He whispered something under his breath, words that no one could hear, but the emotion was cleared. He wasn't just a fellow band member. He wasn't just a friend. He was an older brother who had watched Jungkook grow from a bright-eyed teenager into a global superstar. And now, he was watching him fight a battle no one could have predicted. "Jungkook, come back to us," he reportedly whispered, his voice barely audible, a glimpse of hope. Hours passed before doctors finally emerged with an update. The tension in the room was suffocating as everyone waited for the words that would determine Jungkook's fate. "He's stable for now," the lead physician finally announced. "But he needs complete rest." No movement, no stress. His body has been pushed to its limits. A collective sigh of relief spread through the hospital. But even with this bit of good news, doctors made it clear Jungkook was not out of danger yet. Would he regain his strength? Would he be able to make a full recovery? Or was this just the beginning of a longer, more painful journey? The message that broke millions of hearts as news of Jungkook's collapse spread across social media, ARMY worldwide erupted in both worry and sorrow. Messages flooded online platforms, with fans expressing their love, concern, and prayers for their idol. But it was a simple message from Jungkook's own team that shattered millions of hearts. A single post appeared on BTS's official account. Jungkook is resting. He's fighting. And he feels your love. Just 8 words. But they carried a weight that could be felt across continents. Fans clung to every word, hoping for the day when they would finally hear Jungkook's own voice again. The day when he would smile, laugh, and tell them that he had won this fight. Even though doctors had managed to stabilize Jungkook after his unexpected collapse, his road to recovery remained uncertain. Medical specialists warned that his body was still fragile, and any unnecessary strain could lead to another major setback. The collapse wasn't just a warning, it was a stark reminder that Jungkook's condition was far from normal. His immune system had taken a severe hit due to the poisoning he suffered in the military, and the emergency surgery to remove the toxins had left him weak. Even the smallest movement seemed to drain him. Yet, despite the danger, Jungkook had pushed himself. He had tried to walk when his body clearly wasn't ready. But why? Doctors speculated that the young singer, known for his relentless work ethic and determination, had likely wanted to reassure those around him, especially Jin, who had been by his side since his arrival in New York. It was just like Jungkook to want to show strength, even when his body was failing him. But this time, his body had refused to cooperate. Now, he lay in a hospital bed, his body weak, his consciousness flickering in and out, and his memories still clouded from the trauma. Jin's unwavering devotion, a brother who refuses to leave his side, Jin, had always been the protective older brother figure for Jungkook. Ever since their early days in BTS, he had taken it upon himself to look after the youngest member. And now, as Jungkook lay unconscious, Jin felt a deep, unbearable pain in his heart. He refused to leave Jungkook's side. He barely ate, barely spoke, and barely rested. At one point, a nurse approached him with gentle concern. "Mr. Kim, you need to rest as well. You've been awake for hours." But Jin only shook his head. "I won't leave him alone." There was an undeniable desperation in his voice, one that made even the hospital staff emotional. It wasn't just about being there for Jungkook. It was about making sure that when Jungkook woke up, the first thing he would see was a familiar face. Jin spent hours talking to Jungkook, even when the younger singer couldn't respond. "Do you remember when we used to tease you for sleeping so much?" Jin whispered one night, his voice thick with emotion. "Now I just want you to wake up."